Hello and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming and joining us once again for the Leadership San Ramon Valley graduate series, our little speaker series, where we connect, learn, and grow continually. So happy to have you here and joining us. We know you have other things you probably could be doing, but just the fact that you continually invest your time and energy back into our program shows us that what we have done in the past continues to work. So welcome back. My name is Henry Perez Alonso. For those that I have not met yet, I am currently the president-elect of our board of directors, which means at some point they'll actually let me be president, which I don't know if they really want that, but we'll see. Excited to have you here this morning, really kind of during the month of Thanksgiving and knowing that the value of this knowledge and connections that you've developed in Leadership San Ramon Valley continue on. Again, today is really a day about brainstorming ideas and actions into step so we can really help this frail world kind of move forward. We know that you will hear some things that remind you of classes past, but we really hope to do that and to have you come aboard this ride with both Randall and Terry as they lead you through a day of fun, excitement, and challenge, I would have to say. So ladies and gentlemen, if you don't mind, please, round of applause in your little frame for Randall and Terry as they take you on this next adventure.
Right on. Thank you, Henry. So Randall, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself and then I'll do that and go into the slides. Randall's going to handle, most of the fun interactive stuff. I'm just going to kind of set the table with some boring sit and get.
I hadn't prepared an introduction, but my name is Randall Diamond. I'm on the board for Leadership San Ramon Valley. I was part of the class of 2015, best class ever, and live in Danville. I'm involved in the Parks Commission, county mosquito control, things like that. I aspire to be on town council one day. That's me.
And my name's Terry Koehne. I was part of Leadership San Ramon Valley class of 98. 98, we are great. And it was on the board for probably 10 to 12 years, something like that. And so, Henry, I saw, you mentioned being president-elect. I'm president-elect of San Ramon Rotary right now, and probably unless or until they come to their senses, and then we'll see how it goes. But definitely feel your pain there. But I've been involved in this community for a long time, and I would say that the decision to be part of Leadership San Ramon Valley and to be engaged in that class, and honestly, it was when, for those of you who may have been part of that class or on the board at that time, it was when we were having our first child. We were pregnant with our first child, Trevor, who is now 22 years old. So crazy, right? But it really was one of the best decisions that I personally had ever made, both professionally and personally. So so glad to see that the program remains vibrant and that the program continues to reinvent itself, particularly during this time, right? Because it's so incredibly challenging. So thank you for everyone for joining us today. I think they probably had someone else set up, and then Rachel called and said, 10 people canceled to present, so will you step in? And I said, only if Randall will do it with me. No, just kidding. But I think the board wanted to, for some reason, revisit this whole Ring of Reciprocity topic that we had typically done during the last class, the graduation day class. And so this was an exercise that we had done for many years. So many of you probably have seen this. And so I think the idea, what we wanted to really put together and was for me to kind of just do a revisit of really what the concept is. And then to go into Randall's piece, which is more kind of turning what our intentions are into action. Allow some time for us to dialogue and to brainstorm and to think about ways that we can hopefully turn our intentions into actions that will ultimately benefit our local community. When we had done this as part of the class, it really was more focused on sort of getting to know who your networks are, right? Having a full understanding of your networks of people and really being able to tap into those networks to benefit yourself in order to benefit the community. I think what we're trying to do this time is to turn that around just a little bit, to say, the intention is really not on benefiting ourselves, but it really is directly benefiting our community. So what we're going to do is kind of go through the concept of reciprocity, and then Randall's going to take us through an exercise, and we're going to brainstorm a little bit about, how we, particularly during this COVID-19 environment that has left us all feeling isolated, right? How we might be able to turn that into action in ways that, we may not have thought of before, right? And in ways that can hopefully help empower our community, but also come back to us in ways that help us to feel empowered ourselves and help us to gain energy and things like that, because the whole concept is by helping others, you help yourself. So with that said, we're going to have opportunities to kind of throw some dialogue and some brainstorms into the chat, but I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen and go into the slides here. And can everybody see that okay? Okay, yes?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. All right, so I want to start with, these are my folks. So if I have my Brady Bunch image on the side, so I couldn't even see them. So the man on the right is my dad, Bill. The one next to him is my mom, Fran. And the one next to her is my Aunt Mary, my mom's closest sister. And this is a picture that I've kind of carried as my home screen on my phone for a long, long time, but it is kind of near and dear to me. But it's when they played and when they rolled in a bowling league together for many, many years. And so we're going to talk about that kind of as a lead into the concept. But, my parents, they left me with some valuable lessons. They passed away a little over 20 years ago now. And it's a real crappy club to be in, but a lot of us are probably there now. And they were only 2 months apart when they passed away. So that was really a tough time for our family. But so some of the lessons that they left were good, right? Some not so good. I mean, my parents were 2-pack-a-day smokers for as long as I knew them. My mom smoked probably 2 packs a day while she was pregnant with me, which might say a little something about me. But it's also what ended their life prematurely, I think. And, they ended up like many of our parents, right, in that generation with lung cancer, because they either didn't understand or didn't fully recognize or want to recognize the impact of what that habit was going to have on their lives and the people around them. Some of the good lessons that they left me with, however, were things like family is important. Family is number one. That, my dad came from a family of 11 brothers and sisters, big, strong German Catholic family. Grew up in Richmond, and most of them stayed close. And when I say close, I mean very close. I have over 90 cousins, and we're all extremely close. And so that was a lesson that they really kind of entrenched with me, was the fact that family is something that needs to you need to stay true to. My dad had an open door policy, and by open door, I mean a garage door. When our garage door was open, and my dad was extremely handy, he had every tool known to humankind. He got most of them at garage sales or flea markets and tuned them up. I got most of his tools, and I can tell you that I've tried to use most of them. Half of them I probably don't even know how to use. But he was just sort of a master craftsman. And so when that garage door was open, it was for 2 reasons. It was either somebody was going to come by because they saw the garage door was open and they needed something fixed, whether it was their car, whether it was planing a door, whether it was tuning up a bicycle for one of my friends, whatever. Either that, or it was one of his buddies who would come in and raid the refrigerator and have a couple beers. And that was our normal, right? And that was every day when my dad came home. And he was one of those people who had this kind of attention to detail. Like I said, he had every tool known to humankind, but when he walked through the garage and there was probably 150 screwdrivers on the shelf or on the wall, he would walk straight through the garage and he would walk into my room and say, where's my number 3 screwdriver? You know, the Phillips head with the yellow and black handle. I'm like, what? Oh, sorry, here it is. Yeah, I was working on my bike the other day. Sorry about that. But he was that kind of guy, right? And so whenever he got home, the garage door opened, and then that's where kind of my experience of community began, was with the garage door being open. They also were very big in like family games. So I love to play cards, and I tried to pass that on to my kids. So like, just by a show of hands, how many of you grew up with, or on some level knew how to play, or were introduced to the game of bridge? Raise your hand if you know how to play bridge, or your parents knew how to play bridge. Pinochle. Anybody play Tripoli? Anybody know or understand the game Tripoli? Okay, interesting. My mom and all my aunts played Tripoli, and that was more of a gambling game, and it involved poker. How about cribbage? Cribbage? Okay. Well, those were the games that we all played, at hearts as well, spades as well, all the trump games, excuse the pun. And it was another way for us to be able to connect as a family. And oftentimes with my friends, what I would do is I would introduce them to those games if their parents hadn't taught it to them, right? And they always felt welcome at our home because we did those kinds of things. We played those kinds of games. And then the other thing that my parents were really involved in, and it was really sort of how they got their exercise, was bowling. They bowled 2, sometimes 3 nights a week in leagues. And it was how I got to be good at math, because once I was about 10 years old, I got to keep score. So I was relinquished from the kids area, right? Where on a Thursday night, I would typically go in the kids area and watch Kung Fu or the Brady Bunch. And I got released from that eventually by the time I was 10 or 11 years old, and I got to keep score. And that was just a thrill for me, because I would make like $5, which was awesome. But it was such a big piece of my growing up, heading to Golden Gate Lanes and Lucky Lanes, because that was kind of a second home for me. And so that's really where I wanted to sort of lead into this whole idea about the Ring of Reciprocity and the concept. I'm going to advance the next slide here. Yes, of social capital, because that was how our family, and this is just my example, provided me with the example of what social capital is. So what kind of drew me into this was somebody, when I was with the school district, introduced this book to me, which I was an avid bowler when I was a kid, and I still love to bowl. And it's a way that my extended cousins, that we all connected, and it was introduced to us by our parents, but it was a way for us to connect. So this person, this author, his name is Robert Putnam, and he wrote a book called Bowling Alone. And the whole premise of this basically is that over 25 years of research, he interviewed 500,000 plus people around the whole idea of the concept that he sort of coined of social capital, which in his mind was the key to success, happiness, to health, longevity. It's kind of like the old Carnegie adage that the most valuable tool you have in your tool chest is your Rolodex, right? That not just in business, but in life, the people that you have in your circles and you connect with are really the key to happiness. And so that was kind of, I think, the premise of him going into this whole concept and writing this book. But he found that over 25 years of research, interviewing over 500,000 people, that this generation, and when I say this generation, I'm meaning my generation, we're doing things like signing fewer petitions. We were less engaged in political activity. We belonged to fewer organized groups and organizations. We knew our neighbors less. We less frequently went out of our way to meet new neighbors. And then we did not meet with friends or family as much as we normally had done the generation prior. So what he concluded in sort of hanging out in bowling alleys and interviewing people for a while was that while more Americans were bowling than ever before, they weren't doing it in leagues anymore. They were bowling alone. And so that was kind of what he wanted to sort of explore with this whole idea of social capital and how do we go about reviving the American community, right? So really the premise around that, and let me just back up a smidge. Now, right, in the last 9 months in the experience that we've had in this COVID environment, it makes this situation even worse, right? And my own personal fear is not that once a vaccine is out there and widely distributed, that people are going to now just start jetting down to Disneyland because they want to get it out of our system. My fear is the opposite's going to happen. My fear is that this has hung with us for so long that it's almost become the new normal, right? That people are in isolation and they're finding ways to get used to it. You know, it's why Zoom has you know, their stock has skyrocketed, and that people are able to adapt more to this environment. So let's just hope that that doesn't happen. And really kind of leading into this idea of social capital, his central premise is that the networks that we have and maintain have value, and value beyond just kind of the basic need for human connection and interaction, but value in that what we give comes back to us, right? And it helps to motivate us. It helps give us energy. It helps us sustain our own health, because that need for human interaction is so important in how we go about our daily lives. So he refers to the collective value of all social networks, meaning the people that you know, and that the inclinations that arise from these networks to do things for other people. And that's the reciprocity piece that he talks about. He says that your ability to achieve and have your needs met based on the relationships that you cultivate, right? So the more valuable and the closer knit and we'll talk about sort of the idea of influence and persuasion and how that ties into this. But the more good, solid, concrete relationships that we have in our lives, the more we are able to achieve and have our own needs met. So keys to building social capital, and I just got a few more slides and then I'm going to turn it over to Randall. But understanding what our own social style is and adapting to the styles of others, whether or not you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert, right? And we all went through, probably most of us went through Myers-Briggs during Leadership San Ramon Valley on that first day, and where we talk about personality styles. But he says that regardless of what your personality style is, we all have the ability to cultivate these relationships and build social capital. And that positively influencing others is what leads to this. And that the influencing piece is what we'll get into next. But I think the most classic example that I have is when it comes to sort of the value of that is, you know, and the people who really get it are those who say yes when a friend says, hey, will you help me move, right? Nobody wants to help somebody move. It's the worst. It's the absolute worst. You don't want to, well, you don't want to even ask people to help you move, right? You don't want them to see all the dust in your rooms. You don't want to see them to see all your unmentionables. You don't want any of that. But we also understand that it's a backbreaking kind of thing. And so what we do is we reach out to the people that we're closest to, right? It reminds me of that Seinfeld episode. Do you remember that Seinfeld episode when he asked Keith Hernandez, the first baseman for the Mets, to help him move? And it was just this whole kind of issue because he's like, he's not even a friend of mine. I can't ask him to help me move, you know? So anyway, I had this experience just this last weekend because friends were coming back from San Diego and they were moving a couple of vans back there, and they lived in San Ramon, but they were moving out of their house. And while it was, you know, like, I have so much to do, I don't know if I can do it, ultimately decided, no, it's worth it. Give 2 hours, help them move. It really sucks, but we're gonna do it. And then come to find out when I show up at their house, he's been nursing a really bad back to where he's just, you know, hopped up on meds to where he can barely even move. And so, you know, making that decision to actually go and help them through that process proved to be even more valuable because he was almost completely incapacitated and they wouldn't have been able to do it. So, and knowing that that is going to eventually come back, right? And so that again is kind of the idea behind this. So just go through this real quickly. Catch up here. So Putnam says that the influence we have over other people and the influence that they have over us and their ability to persuade us basically comes in 6 forms. The idea of reciprocity, that people want to help, like you are engaged with people who you know are engaged with you or who you know will support you, right? You're more likely to help those who help you. That you're more likely to support people that you genuinely like, right? Basic stuff. The whole idea of scarcity mentality, that people like what they believe is unique or scarce. That people also respect expertise, and that we tend to follow people of authority. And then Randall's going to touch on this piece here in the next segment. It's connecting to a request to a personal belief, the idea of commitment and consistency, that people want to do what they say they will do because I said I would, right? Is the idea that when you own it and you say it and you commit to it, you're more likely to do it. And then the more that we feel that we have a relationship in solidarity with other people, that we have the same kinds of belief systems, you know, the more that impacts our ability to influence as well. So by definition, reciprocity then means what you give back, you get back. It, in fact, is kind of the engine of social capital. It's like a currency. I pay you for something and I get something in return. So that is kind of his whole idea about reciprocity, but a lot of it has to do with how we enter into that relationship. And then if we enter into that relationship with an ego mindset, meaning that I'm doing this in order to get something in return, and that is really kind of the place that I come from, he goes, then that can be self-defeating. So yeah, I'm going to skip this one. So again, that reciprocity and what we did typically with that last day of leadership, again, was we focused on this level 2, and that'll be the next slide, the pyramid you'll see in a second, which was sort of expanding your networks and the value behind expanding your networks and how that can come back to you tenfold. But for the purpose of this one, we're going to focus on level 3, which is the contributions that we make to others have to be without regard to whether or not it comes back to you. Okay, so that's kind of the mindset. So as we go into Randall's piece, think about it from that perspective, that my focus is going to be on the level of contribution that I make to my community. And as long as I go into it that way, there is no other result that can possibly happen other than it will come back to me in some way, shape, or form. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. So at this point, I am going to turn it over to Mr. Diamond, and I need to unshare, don't I, Randall?
Well, are you seeing my screen now? I'm not seeing any head nods. Do you see my screen? No?
No, let me see.
Let me try one more
Are you a
time.
triangle? Are you a pyramid?
No, should be a circle.
No, it says our screens all say you're viewing Terry Koehne's screen.
Okay, let me see.
If you hit stop share, Terry.
I know, I'm not seeing it. It's usually at the stop. Oh, there it is. Boom. All right.
Okay. Now are you seeing the circle? I see a thumbs up from Rachel. Excellent. Well, Terry, thank you so much for that recap. It brought me back to the last day of Leadership San Ramon Valley when we went through this exercise, and I'm looking at some of the names. I see some folks from the most recent class. You haven't had the chance to go through this, but you did get the condensed version. And for those graduates, you are familiar with these concepts. Two things. I wanted to add that in addition to the connections that you built in Leadership San Ramon Valley, you also have knowledge and things like the planning process and local economics. You also know that you can reach out to people like Rachel, who's on the school board, or Newell or Renee or Lisa, who are on the line on town council, or Denton if you need somebody in San Ramon law enforcement. So, I wanted to add that to this. And then the other thing that I wanted to say is, I'm going to need you guys to come off mute for this to not be a total whiff. And so we're going to need some brave souls to chime in, and we'll, I realize it's a little bit clunky on electronics, so just whoever speaks up first, we'll go with that voice. So I have a question for you. I pulled this graphic up. In our family, we don't say always or never, but I did like this one. Action always beats intention. Is there anyone who disagrees with this? Agrees with this? I see thumbs up.
I can add something, Randall, if you want people to participate. My mother used to say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
That's exactly right. And in fact, that was a great tee up, because now we're looking at the gap between great intentions and great outcomes. And that what do you see in the middle? This abyss of stuckness. And so I'm curious, and actually I'm just going to call on folks, and if I know you're in more trouble like Gail, I'm curious to hear what you think some of those things in the abyss of stuckness are that keep people from their intention to creating an outcome.
Oh, I'm sure it's a very long list. We could all probably provide at least one thing. Getting sidetracked, too much multitasking, lack of motivation, fear, not knowing where to start, being overwhelmed by how big, the task is, illness.
Those are all great. And I think with such a comprehensive answer, people are going to think that you were a plant girl, but that was perfect. I wrote a few out, work, kids, anxiety, just a general sense of anxiety right now. You mentioned fear. I put fear of failure on my list. It's like, well, what if this doesn't work? So I want to share a personal example. Apparently we're all about personal examples today between myself and Terry. I guess we're just those kind of people. When I was a Boy Scout, I earned all of the merit badges that you need to be an Eagle. That's 21 merit badges. 14 of those are specifically required. I had done everything, gone on all the campouts, and all I needed to do was an Eagle project. And when I say all, I realize that it's a big undertaking. But here's what I thought of when I heard Eagle Project. It was, there was a Boy Scout who had gathered books and got the resources together and started a library in a impoverished city in India. And I thought, holy cow, how am I gonna start a library in India? And I just got overwhelmed. And I was 17 years old. I had a year to complete the project. I didn't even start on it because I was like, I can't build a library in India. Well, now I'm an adult Boy Scout leader, and one of the things that I've learned is that you can refinish benches in a public park, and that's a perfectly adequate way of contributing to the community and executing a project. And I will continue that Boy Scout thread because my son is 13, he's a Boy Scout, and I suggested to him an idea of collecting contact information from our neighbors. Now, he got stuck in the, the abyss of stuckness. But we do have a neighbor across the street who took the reins. And so she reached out to all the neighbors in a safe and socially distant manner. And so we now have a contact sheet for everybody in our local area so that we can text one another, check in on one another. And this would be a perfectly adequate project because it added value to our family, to the other families, in particular, some of the widows that live in our area. And so as you think about ways that you can take the connections that you have and the knowledge that you gained from your time in Leadership San Ramon Valley, don't feel overwhelmed, but do feel inspired to do something. And as I hand it back to Terry, I'll just leave you with this rhetorical question, which is, think to yourselves, how are we going to turn today from interesting, because we've had some super interesting Leadership San Ramon Valley graduate series talks, but we're looking for action today. So I'm going to hand it back over to Terry to lead this next part.
Awesome. Yes, thank you, Randall. So what we wanted to do now is just do a little brainstorming. And what we thought we would do is just allow everybody a few minutes to contribute to the chat around suggestions, ideas, thoughts, opinions about things that you could do or you have seen done or you think is a need in your community, in your household, in your neighborhood. You know, we want to kind of think globally, but act locally. So we want to, you know, sort of within the context of this COVID-19 environment, right? So, and really we wanted to sort of set the table with a few guide questions. And so I just started to put those in the chat, but one is to think about what is your passion, right? And so when we think about the things that we can, you know, sort of apply this whole idea of reciprocity and make a solid contribution, the first thing to think about is, what is our passion? What sort of gives us energy, right? That because the worst thing to do, I think, is to contribute in a way that where you enter into it with a resentful mindset, right? So we want to go into it with a loving mindset. We want to go into it with the whole idea of, wow, this is something that not only is going to make a difference, but it's something that I'm personally passionate about. So maybe it could focus around what is your passion. It could focus around, what are you good at? And I'll put that in the chat too. What are you good at? So something that you might have, a talent or a gift that maybe not many other people have, particularly in your neighborhood or within the community, that you think could lend itself to a positive contribution. The third one is what comes easy to you. Because when we talk about the idea of turning an intention into action, right? What Gail had mentioned in the plethora of examples that she provided, some of it, that when we talk about the abyss of stuckness, I think that's right, Randall? that we get stuck because something is just not, it's just hard, it's difficult, it's, you know, we make commit to something, but then when we do, we're like, oh crap, what did I do that for? Because I don't have the expertise. So what comes easy to you? So those are sort of the three questions. And then it all centers around this final question, which is, what does this community need now? So I think that's really the crux of it. And so that's where we wanted to focus our brainstorming. So what we wanted to do is just to give you a few minutes to think and reflect, and then add to the chat what you believe this community needs now. And it could be, you know, it could be by community, the entire town of Danville or the city of San Ramon. It could be, you know, my court or my next door neighbor. I saw a news story today on Channel 2 about how people are buying out all the Christmas stuff early because they're setting up Christmas stuff early. And so our neighbor across the street, who just lost her husband, and she is elderly, one of the things my kids want to do is they want to put up Christmas decorations for her. So, you know, things like that. Let's just kind of get the storming of the brains in motion and start to fire stuff in the chat. And because, again, this whole idea of like minds, you might see something that triggers something in your own mind around ways that you might be able to contribute. So I'm going to be quiet for a few minutes and allow everyone to just throw stuff in the chat. You can react to other people's ideas or suggestions. And if it spurs on one of your own, please feel free to contribute that. And I'm going to put myself on mute.
Not all at once, folks.
Well, are we encouraged to type it in the chat or just speak?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or Jean, you can speak, and other folks.
We can do either or. Absolutely, absolutely. And if you want to speak, I'll do my best to try and capture it in the chat. How's that, Jean?
Oh, even better.
Great.
Because speaking is something I'm good at. So two things that for me personally, one is I think I'm really good at coming up with ideas that are a little, my friends always call out of the box. So I feel frustrated that there isn't some kind of forum in which people could just sort of deposit interesting, unusual ideas that could be accessed by those in charge later on. Like, for example, the issue of homelessness. Okay, now my planning commission friends had a funny retort to this, but if you look at places like self-storage facilities where you have rows of very similar kinds of things, you know, it occurred to me one time that those could be really quickly repurposed into affordable housing units for homeless. Now, my planning commission friend said, so you want to put the homeless in storage? But I mean, it's just simple ideas like that. You know, like it's somebody put about picking up litter. I thought one time you could work with the dog food companies and create little litter bags and call it PALs, puppies against litter. And you could, you know, carry your litter bag along with your poop bag and get, you know, like social credit for having your litter bag and your poop bag. But, you know, those kinds of ideas. So that's how my brain thinks. But I'm not good about getting them into action to the point.
You had me at poop bag, Jean.
Hey, Terry, can I jump in? I see Patty Youth said, I've got lots of enthusiasm, need help with focusing. Yeah, what did you mean as you come off mute?
Well, just that I I have a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm about things. And I will, every time I hear something, I go, oh, that's a great idea. Oh, that's a great idea. Oh, and I can't do all of that. So that's my thing. I mean, you know, hearing, oh, help a neighbor with the Christmas tree. Okay, well, then I need to go out and find out what neighbors might need help with that. And it kind of gets to be overwhelming with all the things that you could possibly do.
That's great, Patty. And I'm going to jump out with something as well. And this may sound a little self-serving, but it's kind of what reciprocity is about in some ways. But I was just having a conversation with, many of you know, probably Kathy Gailey, who's, you know, very involved in our community and really involved in our Rotary Club. But as president-elect next year, I have to now think of a project of mine that I'm going to push forward as president of our Rotary. And for the life of me, I'm having a total brain fart right now because I can't think of something. So I would welcome any and all suggestions around a community project that our Rotary Club can sink its teeth into. You know, I think about education because that's kind of my wheelhouse, but it's almost too predictable for me. So anyway, throwing that out there.
Mike, I like what you put in the chat about understanding different perspectives, incumbent on us to listen and be compassionate. I'm curious if you have ideas on how to activate that. Have you come off mute? Maybe, hopefully you're not sharing.
Yeah, so I'm just sitting here with the song in my head, right? And I think it's just, you know, what we've seen with COVID and also this political environment is just a lot of people butting heads and trying to push their position. And I think if we just try to get the word out and just have people think and like take a moment when you're in that moment of judgment where you're saying you're wrong and you're different than me and I don't understand it, I don't agree with it, to just sit back for a moment and just say, all right, let me listen, let me understand. Because I just recently had a conversation with a neighbor. It was awesome. We were on really different sides of the thing, but as we were talking about it, we kind of realized that maybe we were more similar than we thought. And so, I don't know, that's just been on my mind lately. I think probably on a lot of people's minds is, let's not preach acceptance, let's be accepting.
I love that. So I'm gonna just push us forward. There's a website that we'll be referencing in a minute called Because I Said I Would. And they have a spot on there with ideas for how to be, you know, one of the quotes that I love is be the change you want to see. And I don't even know if I'm quoting that accurately, but that's how I remember it. And so here are a number of ideas, and actually I just captured 9 of them that were already put together. And so it's sometimes nice to see what have other people done, and watching the group chat here is a great opportunity as well. But yeah, definitely finding out where your passion, your skills, and filling a need can have an impact. Other thoughts, Terry, before we go to the next section?
No, I don't think so.
This is what you wanted to say. This is what I keep in my
Be the change you wish to see in the world. I need to just change a few words and I'll have it. But I love that, Vanessa. Thanks for sharing.
What's that website, Randall?
Called Because I Said I Would, I think .org. If you type in Because I Said I Would, you'll find it. And in fact, that's a great transition because the question is, what now? And so I have a 1-minute video. It's nice to know. It's 1 minute and 5 seconds. So hopefully this all works. If it doesn't, we'll skip it, but I'm going to try.
The most important thing you can do for this cause is to be a person of your word. Contemplate your life. Look into your past, the world around you. Remember, there are promises that have not yet been kept. Remember the commitments that perhaps you still need to make. That is what is most important. Individual accountability, self-control. It starts with you. The world, it is in great need, and so you are needed. And when you fulfill that promise, when they ask you why you spent all of that time, when they ask you why you did it even when the tides turned against you, when they ask you why, remember where your promise came from. Remember why you started. You look them in the eye and you just say,
because I said I would.
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 So, Newell, thank you for adding in the chat the description from Because I Said I Would on their website. Is it .org?
Yeah, I sent the link. It's the one before that. It's Because I Said I Would.
Oh, great. So I'm curious to ask this group, who's in for making a change? Who wants to be the change that you'd like to see? Is there anyone who's willing to raise their hand? I see Patty, I see Jean, I see Henry and Terry and Vanessa and Gail. Some folks aren't on video. Rachel, awesome. Is there anyone who would be comfortable sharing what your idea is?
This is Gail. Hi, I'm not going to share my idea, but I just wanted to say that this commune that we're having right now is wonderful and uplifting. I'm in a role where all I hear is the complaints, and there have been a lot of them lately. I almost have PTSD from it. So thank you all for being here today and talking about how we can all help. It's a nice little diversion for me. So that's what I have to say.
Love it. Love it. Now, if somebody could follow on and talk about their idea for the community, that would just be perfect.
I see Lynn has her hand raised. Lynn, do you want to contribute? Where'd you go?
You're on mute, Lynn.
Sorry, didn't mean to raise my hand.
Okay.
Michelle, I saw you just join on video. Did you want to share your idea?
Oh, I'm sorry. I had to step away for a second. So my ideas, I had a couple ideas. So we're talking about the ideas for the community. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, our ideas for the community. Oh, I had the couple about the litter and being more connected. I don't even remember what my ideas are. I'm sorry, this is terrible. But this is really showing myself that we get distracted by too many things. That's proof that you really can't multitask. But I did. We did a challenge 22 recently, and one of the things was picking up litter, and it's surprising. Our communities are so clean. And then I saw a note in the newspaper about someone complaining about trash that they see, and when you start looking, there is always things that blow out of cars or trucks or something, and we picked up some litter on Camino Tasahar, which is an unincorporated area, and there was just lots that needed. And I keep saying, my husband says, why don't you just send in a note on Nextdoor and say you're going to do it at this time, and then you can get a bunch of people to help you do that, because I see people doing that on Iron Horse as well, just doing it individually. But when you talk about the whole bowling thing, where more people are doing it individually, it's nice to do it together. And that's one of the reasons why I like Rotary too, is I think someone mentioned about seeing an organized thing, is that you just expand that effort so much more. You have more fun when you're doing it with somebody else. And just for all those reasons, I really like that. So that was one of my ideas.
I love it, Michelle. Thanks for contributing that. I'll share one that I was working on. In fact, Gail, I was in your office with Candace. We were talking about this when lockdowns were being announced on the news, which was a project to address social isolation in the community and find ways to activate neighborhoods so that there's, in Candace Anderson's words, no neighbor left behind. And so we started working on putting together a coalition, and then COVID happened and it was a total emergency, and we didn't know how long it was going to last or what it was going to look like. And so I put that project up on the shelf with these color-coded books. And that was the end of it. And I'm thinking right now that what I need to do is pick that project back up, because we're in this for, you know, the next many months, if not years. And so it's a good reminder to myself. When I was putting this together, I wasn't even thinking about how I was going to be the change that I wanted to see. But that's my commitment to you, is that I'm going to pick that project back up. And we're actually winding down here. And so I just wanted to share with you a couple statistics. The first one is 65%. Does anyone have a guess what 65% might represent? Jean, you're not on mute, so I'm going to ask you.
Oh,
what your guess is.
Okay. Gosh, given the topic, I would say probably 65% of people say that things should change.
You're probably right. That 65%. This is a statistic that I got from the American Society of Training and Development. So it's all about how do you train people and then activate. And when somebody has an accountability partner, your chances of success are 65%. 65% sounds pretty good. 2 out of 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
What if I told you there's a 95% method? I know you're all on mute going, ooh, what is that? Well, if you have an accountability partner and you have ongoing meetings to check in with one another on progress, then you have a 95% likelihood of success. And I just want to return to that message about my absent Eagle project, because I thought I needed to start a library in India. And really, I could have refinished some benches in the community. And gosh, do I wish that I would have refinished some benches and have finished that. So my commitment to you is to follow up this meeting and check in and find out who's in, and then to set up accountability partners. And if you have somebody in mind, you can let me know via email. I'll send that out. But I'd love to set everybody up who's interested with accountability partners. And then my second commitment is that I'll check in on the community partners a few times over the next few months. And we'll see if we can turn today's meeting from interesting to impactful. And Terry, if you have anything to add, go for it, or we can hand it over to him.
Yeah, and my commitment is exactly what I talked about before, is to really come up with a thoughtful project for our Rotary Club for next year. So it'll be something that'll be structured and organized. And if anybody has any ideas or thoughts, I'm all ears. But I thought I would just kind of help to wrap up with a quick story that many of you have probably heard this one, because I like to share it because I'm a sports fan, but I think it lends itself to this topic. But it's about a guy who was drafted in the 1988 NBA draft, Stacey King from the University of Oklahoma. He was drafted by the Chicago Bulls during a pretty spectacular run by the Bulls. And during his rookie season, he was their #1 draft choice. A few games into the season, he was called off the bench to come in and play. Scored 1 point in a game, and not even enough to make it in the box score the next morning. And so 1 point in a game that, the Bulls had scored like 120. And one of his colleagues, a guy by the name of Michael Jordan, scored 69 points that night. So after the game, reporters were swarming around Michael Jordan, talking to him about, wow, another record-breaking night for Air Jordan. And one lone reporter came over to talk to Stacey King, and he just looked him in the eye and he said, "What was it like to play with Michael tonight?" Because it was his first game playing. And he looked at him again. He contributed 1 point. And he goes, "Well, I'll always remember this night for the rest of my life, because tonight was the night that Michael and I combined for 70." That was
awesome.
Just a way to kind of wrap up, right? No contribution. I mean, no contribution is too small, regardless of the contribution that we make. So I think for me, sometimes the message is just show up, right? Just show up, and the rest will take care of itself. So I'll leave you with that. Randall, back to you.
I'm done. Henry, bring us home, man.
Right
No,
on.
just, I mean, that's perfect. Just show up is exactly what each and every one of you did today in order to, you showed up for yourself first and foremost. I know that was what everybody's motivation is. Like, let's see how, what's in it for me today. And hopefully you've got that little tingle that brought you to the program or made you still connected to the program that says, it's not just about me. So today really it's, starting with that session. So hopefully our mind switched just a touch today that said, hey, there's something more. Again, I'm reminded I need to get out there and know that you were here and meant to be here this very moment for whatever it was that you're going to glean right now, or when you hang up and realize, oh, wait a minute, that was a good thought. All of those things are playing a role today. And I want to make sure that you all recognize that. And hopefully, that if you were to take a loud vote or a silent vote, you're saying, yes, today something changed today, or something urged me to go. Just a reminder that Leadership San Ramon Valley, right, it's designed to provide current and emerging community leaders with information and skills necessary really to appreciate the resources, understand the issues, manage those challenges, lead in that, what they say, the rapidly evolving business, political, educational, cultural, social environment, all that stuff within our valley, right? That is, what we're designed to do. But if you remember, that design, which is grounded in the notion that the community's greatest resources are the quality and commitment of its leaders, which is you. That is you. So if you forget who you are a leader in our valley. You are a leader in our community. You are the ones that now set the stage and move forward. My commitment to you, I keep thinking about how do I make community engagement, in a Sesame Street manner so that the regular guy can say, hey, I understand what it takes to be engaged and understand what I'm looking at. So that's something I'm going to be working on. But right now for you, through this program, the alumni program, and through the program that we do as we continue to bring leaders up in our community, I remind each and every one of you to go do something. Don't sit on your laurels. Go make something happen. Call us, call each other, look around the Brady Bunch tiles and say, I'm going to call them and I want to make them help me. I too have a lot of energy in trying to figure out, Patty, what am I supposed to do with this stuff? But bringing it down to 3 things for me. What are those 3 things that I need to do? And I don't know what they are at the moment, but I'm just letting you know that that's how we go. We will have a survey for feedback from this session. Please be thoughtful of it. I know it's each session that we're trying to do is trying to build upon the next. And again, to continue your leadership journey. Our next session is going to be December 17th. So look out for that one. We have a special guest coming in to speak. Recently retired and almost replanted. Dominic Yancey will be our next speaker to really tell us, kind of, again, focus on our leadership and what's coming back. Help us with your feedback on how we can make these better for you and for future leaders. And as we continue to speak to each other and help be accountable to each other and be accountable to our community. So thank you so much for taking the time out today. Thank you, Randall. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, everybody, for playing your part, playing your role. Come back. Let's have some fun and keep on learning together. And congrats to all of you that are leading our community in those elected fashions. Thank you for doing so. It's a tough job. I'm glad somebody's doing it, but we are here to support you as well as regular old community members. So please let us know how we can help you as well. So anything else from anyone else? All right. Well, thank you guys so much for everything. We appreciate your time and energy. So we'll see you at the next one.